finding a percent of a number using proportions. There's a bunch of different ways you can find a percent of a number, but using a proportion is a very good way to do it. Setting up a proportion keeps all of your numbers and letters and variables and everything you have nice and organized so you're not making any mistakes. These two sections of the proportion box represent your two fractions. Remember, a proportion, all it is a set of equivalent fractions. Like 1/2 is equal to 5/10. Those two fractions are equal, that would be a proportion. So these are going to be your two fractions, numerator, denominator, numerator, denominator. This extra spot over here is just simply to label everything so you know what everything is, you're not putting numbers in the wrong spots. The numerator represents the part of the number that you actually have. The denominator represents the whole thing. So if we're talking about a percent, remember the whole thing for a percent would be 100. Percent literally means out of 100. So every time you do a percent proportion, that 100 is going to be in the exact same spot every time. Whatever your percent number is going to be right on top of the 100. 40% means 40 out of 100. 40 over 100. There's your fraction, and it means 40%. The 70 is going to be our whole amount. If I'm giving you 40% of my $70, all I have is $70. So that wouldn't be my part, that would be my entire amount of money. $70, the whole amount that I have in my pocket goes on the bottom. That's your denominator, the whole thing. And the part, that's what we're trying to figure out. If I owe you 40% of $70, how many dollars is that? That's what we want to try to figure out. Alright, so what I like to do is use a scale factor. Scale factor is any number that you can multiply by, but in a proportion you use it more than one time. For example, if I could do 70 times a number and get 100, I would want to use that same number times x to get 40. Okay, I can't do 70 times a whole number and get 100 though, it just doesn't work. Likewise, I can't do 40 times a number and get 100. So I need to do something with these numbers before I can use them with the scale factor. Quickest, easiest way to do something is to simplify them. So I'm going to get rid of a 0 on top and on bottom. Remember, anytime you have a fraction that your numerator and denominator both end in a 0, a quick way to simplify is just to simply get rid of the 0. Notice I'm leaving 1 0 here. I only got rid of 1 0 on top, so I can only get rid of 1 0 on bottom. So the 40/100ths that we had before has the same value as 4/10. They mean the exact same thing. Now I can find a scale factor. I can't do any 4 times something and get 10, but I can go from right to left and do 10 times what? What would 10 times something to get 70? Hopefully you're telling me 7. 10 times 7 is 70. What else do I need to do? Well, whatever I do for the denominator, I need to do the exact same thing for the numerator. 10 times 7 is 70. 4 times 7 is, do you know what the answer is? Hopefully you're telling me 28, because that's the answer. 4 times 7 is 28. So 40% of 70 would be 28. If I say I'll give you 40% of my money, and my money is $70, that means I'm giving you $28. Alright, let's look at another way we can do this. That's kind of the long way to do it using a proportion. And again, it's a really good way to do it. Nothing wrong with it. But there is a quicker way. I want to make sure you see that as well. The quick, easy way to figure out a percent of a number is simply take the number, 70, and multiply it. I want you to stop and think for a second, what would 40% be as a decimal? Well, hopefully you're telling me that it is 0.40, because that's what it is. 70 times 0.40. 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 7 is 0, so nothing much happens in that first step. We go to the next row down, start with a 0. 4 times 0, 4 times 7 is 28. Add them up. Not really much point in adding because we're just adding plus 0, so that's just going to turn out to be 2800. And then we need to look back up here at our problem. Did we have any decimal places? Yes, we did. We had 2 of them. So in our answer, we should have 2 decimal places. And our answer is 28, or 28.00. They mean the same thing. Don't really need those zeros. And remember, that's the exact same answer we got on the other screen. So that's a way you can check yourself. Do the proportions, see what you get, and then check it by simply multiplying. 2 ways you can figure out a percent of a number.